Hello YouTube, welcome to this new video guys. I know it has been such a long time since I've uploaded. I'm pretty sure over 2 months. And I just want to say guys, I'm very sorry about that. I've been very busy with school and everything, but I promise guys, I'm back with amazing videos. Hello. And with my last video doing actually really well in my opinion with cults, I decided, and some of these comments I'll put up on the screen actually helped me decide making this video, is you guys really seem to enjoy the me talking about cults. So that's why today I picked, we are going to talk about the Manson family, a cult that in 1969 basically went on a murder spree, talking about the Tate murders, if you ever heard of that, and the Bianca murders. This cult was ran by Charles Manson, and this cult at the time absolutely terrified Los Angeles. And I'm going to be talking about Charles Manson's upbringing, how he started this cult, and the very sad murders that included Sharon Tate and the La Biancas. So I say let's get right into this video, and I hope you guys enjoy this video.
You for being the devil, we're convicting you for being responsible for our actions. I'm not responsible for anyone's actions but my own
is reminiscent of a weird religious rite. 5 persons, including actress Sharon Tate, were found dead at the home of Miss Tate and her...
Now, Charles was born 1934 as Charles Mills Maddox, and he was born to his mother, Kathleen. But his mother did have him when she was around 16 years old in Cincinnati, Ohio. Not too long after Charles' birth, a new man named William Manson. So Charlie would basically take on his stepdad's last name, making his name Charles Manson as we know today. Now, Charles Manson did have a very rough childhood. His mother was always getting in trouble. She was always in trouble with the law, and his mother was actually a pretty bad alcoholic. Even a story told that one time they were in a bar, his mother was in a bar, and when he was a baby, and the lady was joking about, hey, I would take your kid and just give me some beer and I'll give you the kid. So basically left Charles at the bar with this lady trying to get rid of him because she seemed to really not care about Charles at all. In 1931, Kathleen would be locked up for robbery. While Charles' mother was in prison, he would go live with his aunt and uncle. Kathleen was out on parole in 1942. She would still continue to drink heavily, not really being home and leaving Charles Manson by himself, which this does seem to be a very common thing with, for example, serial killers and cult leaders having a very rough upbringing. But it really does, like, you might want to feel bad for what happened when he was a kid, but it really doesn't excuse what he's done in the future with all this evil he's brought to the world. When Charles Manson was 8 years old, his mother would try to go to the courts and put him in foster care, which this basically failed, so a better option was going to a Catholic school, which he would run away from a ton and get into a lot of trouble. By 17, he had a long list of crimes on his record, crimes like as heavy as armed robbery. In 1954, after serving time in prison, he would be put on parole. He would be put on parole for good behavior, back with his mother at the time. In 1955, he would meet a woman named Rosie, and knowing each other very long, Charles Manson would get into a relationship with Rosie. Now, I want to add that Rosie was only 15 while Charles Manson was 20, and she would get married to Charles Manson the same year they actually met. Now, Rosie would be pregnant while Manson and her would live in Los Angeles, but this marriage would actually end pretty quickly after Charles Manson would be locked up for 5 years in prison. The crime he got thrown in prison for was actually car theft, and after she heard his sentence, how long his sentence was going to be, she divorced him and then went with another man to live a happy life. But I also want to add why in prison, his wife Rosie actually did give birth to his son, Manson Jr. People really don't know this. Charles Manson did have 3 children, and not with Rosie. I'm pretty sure Rosie only gave birth to one of his kids, but he did have 3 children. What is very sad about Manson Jr. is later in Manson Jr.'s life, when he was younger, hearing about what's happening on TV with his dad becoming a cult leader and running this cult and killing people, he would actually end up taking his life at a pretty, I would say, a pretty young age. due to the trauma from hearing what his kind of monster his father was, which is very...
My question here, huh?
Are you sane?
Sane?
Yes.
That's relative.
I could talk to you except through.
Now, in 1967, Charles Manson would be let out of prison. And I want to add, why he was in prison, he learned a lot from the other prisoners. You would expect after being there for 3 years and being let out on good behavior, you would see a lot. And by the time he was a kid, he was in prison a lot. Like I told you, he had a list of crimes. So most of his life was spent in prison at this young age. So he really did learn from the pimps in prison, learned how to pimp. He also learned Scientology a lot, talking to someone in there about Scientology. And then he learned his love for music. When he was released, he would move to San Francisco. Now, during the time of this was the hippie movement. So the Summer of Love was going on, where basically 100,000 people came out to the area. And a lot of people at the event were young runaway teenagers, and there was a lot of drugs going on at the time, like LSD, hallucinogenic drugs.
LSD or psychedelic chemicals are just tools of consciousness. They're like a microscope, like a scientist uses a microscope to enlarge.
Now, with Charles Manson being good at manipulation, he was seen as a very charming person. A lot of people who were around him at this time said they really trusted him. Now, one of the first girls to start to follow Manson and join his little group, her name was Mary Berner, who was actually a librarian before she would quit her job and start to follow him and help Charles Manson recruit other girls to his cult. He was known around the area as Charlie and his girls. That's just when they were visiting a doctor's office. I do want to add, Charles Manson did have a good amount of girls in this cult, mostly women, but he did have a few males, which one of the males that's very important to these crimes on later is Tex Watson, which we will talk about. Of course, I'm not going to break down every Manson family member because there was quite a few, but I will, like I said, I'm going to be talking about Tex Watson, so I'm only going to be talking about ones that were important to his crimes. Of course, his members were always seen traveling in an old school bus, and actually their main living was at a ranch. In this ranch was actually an old movie set. Here is where Charles Manson would give them a home to sleep at, these runaway young kids, and they have somewhere to eat. They have a lot of hallucinogenics, which I feel hallucinogenics do. There is research that they do change part of your brain. And I feel when Charles Manson was going on his rant of how he was almost like Jesus, and them seeing things that aren't there really helped him in the long run of telling these people, look, every story I tell you is 100% true. You guys should come follow me, believe me. Do whatever I say for you, even kill for me. This section really is interesting because this is morally based on his music. Around this time, Manson would start, like I said, in prison. He really liked music. Now, around this time, Manson would get into contact with big-time record labels and producers that saw and thought that Manson had a talent for music. This somehow would connect him to the Beach Boys, which, if you don't know the Beach Boys, they're pretty big at the time. I'm sure everyone has heard about them at least once. Actually, Dennis Wilson, who was the drummer of the Beach Boys, who was hanging around Manson and the Manson family. I don't think a lot of the Beach Boys, according to my research, a lot of the Beach Boys did not like Charles Manson. They thought he was bad news, and clearly later on they would be 100% correct with that. There's stories of the Manson family sleeping at his home and them doing drugs together, and I think the drummer they talk about, he really liked all the girls that were around Manson. Manson had a control. He had a control over so many people in this. Music producers were really trying to, and the music labels were trying to, even like the Beach Boys really were helping mostly with this, to get him in the studio, recording some footage. You can find his stuff on the internet, his old music, but what they say is he was just a real pain in the studio. Like, didn't sit still, like he was just a real difficult to record with. In the end, his music career did not work out at all. The Beach Boys stopped really talking to him. The music label stopped talking to him. And Charles Manson believed that the music label ripped him off. This was the big turning point. This seemed to be where stuff getting more violent, more drugs. Stuff was just starting to get very real at the Manson family ranch. Now, I do want to talk about the theory that he was, well, his belief he was putting into the Manson family's head, and that is the helter-skelter. So during this time when they were starting to plan killings, stuff was getting pretty serious, and there's a lot of lead up to, I don't think a lot of people know the lead up to these murders and why these actually happened, but there are dots to connect why some of these murders have happened. I do have to say, before I do talk about the helter-skelter, during this time, Charles Manson would hear one of his members, the people he was, I wouldn't really call him a member, but someone he was hanging around with got ripped off by a drug dealer. And Manson would shoot this drug dealer over the drug deal gone wrong. And after shooting him, Charles Manson would go back to the ranch.
Manson shot you. Is that true?
Could be.
Well, let's not kid each other around now. It's either true or it isn't true. Did he shoot you? And if so, when and where?
The man who was shot actually survived this shooting, and he was just a drug dealer in that area. I heard he was a pretty big-time drug dealer. I don't know what to call him big time, but he was making some money selling drugs on the streets. But when he shot him, there was a belief, Manson believed he was a Black Panther. He believed that now the Black Panthers were the enemy because he shot one of their members over a drug deal gone wrong. And I don't really, of what I looked up, they never said he was actually a Black Panther. But Charles Manson would start guarding the ranch in ways, have people with guns set up, watching out, always paranoid about it. So that is really where his helter-skelter theory came out. His members, that he was a mix of the god and devil. He was a god in their eyes. Like a lot of cult members say, they get their followers believing they're a god. People in the Manson family really fell for it. Oh, Helter Skelter is actually based off the Beatles song. Everybody knows the Beatles. I don't think I have to explain the Beatles, but I'm sure they're old school, but everyone has heard about them before. They really changed music in a way. But their song Helter Skelter, Charles Manson was very obsessed with this song. And for some reason in this song, he believed actually parts of the whole White Album, which he believed were telling him a race war is about to happen, especially the song Helter Skelter. He told his followers that white and black people were going to go to war, and he believed the black people were going to win the war, and then they were going to come to him in a way and he was going to take the power from them. It's a very weird and confusing theory.
English, how long have we been at war with races? Since we come out of caves and you didn't like Irishmen? It's been a race war all my life.
Charles was planning something big, a series of crimes that would shock Los Angeles. And in 1969, Gary Hinman, who had a good amount of connection to the Manson family, but I don't really believe, the source that I looked up, I don't really believe he was a Manson family member. He just had association with them. He would be at his home when a few of the Manson family members would show up at this home, and the goal was to get money off of them. He would refuse the cult members. It would tie him up, and for around 3 days they would be asking him, hey, give me this money, basically almost torturing him into giving them money. And he kept refusing. Still refused even when Charles Manson himself would show up to the home and cut the man's face with a sword. After Manson would leave, one of the members named Bobby were told to take care of Gary. He would take Gary's life by stabbing him, while Susan Atkins, which was one of the girls, and Mary Berner, which I talked about earlier, was keeping watch. And after the murder of Gary, the family drew on the wall a bloody paw print. So if you think about who that adds up, it is the Black Panthers. They're trying to frame Gary Hinman's murder on the Black Panthers. And this murder, of course, is not very talked about. They only talk about, a lot of times they'll talk about the Tate murders, or LaBianca murders, but they do not talk about the murder of Gary Hinman that happened almost right before this. Now, 1 week and a half later, the Manson family would target their next victims. A late night in the summer, there would be a car with Manson family members in it. That would be Tex Watson, Susie Atkins, Tricia Krenwinkel, and Linda Kasabian. Now, this group would be ordered to go to this house, and this is where Manson had a lot of connection to this house. A music producer who lived here at the home, he would be one of the music producers to reject Manson when he was trying to build his music career. But actually, the home was being rented at the time by pregnant Sharon Tate, who was a growing actor at the time, and she was in a movie, for example, The Valley of the Dolls, which was a pretty big movie at the time. And including her, 4 other people would lose their life at this house that night. Family would start going towards the home, and would find a young man in his car named Stephen Parent. And Stephen Parent, they say he was there for the home, one of the home caretakers, and basically all he was trying to do that night, what I've heard at least, that he was trying to sell something or buy something. All he was doing that night, and pretty much just a bad play, wrong time, wrong place situation. Tex would shoot Stephen and leave him in the car to die. This would be the first victim of the Tate murders. It did not, as I know, it did not alert anybody in the Sharon Tate's home at the time. Inside the home, a man named Jay Sebring, who was a celebrity hairdresser, he would be tied up and stabbed and shot by the Manson family, while Sharon Tate would also have her life taken in the same exact way by them. Now, I've heard in interviews that the Susan Atkins is actually one of them who killed Sharon Tate. She had absolutely no mercy for Sharon Tate. Sharon Tate was telling them that she was pregnant, and she had absolutely no remorse. Fuller would be running outside, and when one of the members would chase her down, she would be chased down and stabbed 28 times. Close by, Wojciech Wrzosowski would also be found in the backyard while trying to run, and he would actually have wounds to his head after he's hit with the butt of a handgun. What was very interesting, the police found at the crime scene, the Manson family wrote on the walls messages with blood. For example, there would be pig written on the wall. Of course, when people heard about this murder, I'm sure being on the news, it really terrified the city. Everyone the next night was panicking and, basically panicking, locking their doors, don't know who's going to be next in a way. Police, actually, the detectives who went in when they were looking at the bodies and everything to identify everybody and see what happened, they said it was one of the worst things they've ever seen, if not the worst. It was they said the Manson family had no remorse in what they did at all. The Manson family would go out again, but this time they would be driving with Charles Manson himself. He believed, of course, Charles Manson told them to go kill Sharon Tate and everyone in that house, and they knew that wasn't the right people, but they still took those innocent people's lives anyways. In his words, he basically he believed it was too messy. He didn't like how they did it. A couple new members, but same like Tex Watson and them, were looking for their next victims. They would end up at the home of Leno LaBianca and his wife Rosemary LaBianca, and Leno was actually a supermarket owner when his wife Rosemary, she would run a successful clothing store. Now, Charles Manson would get out of the car, go to the front door, and him and the Manson family would come up also and tie the couple up. Manson would basically rob the house and tell the couple on the ground, the LaBiancas, that they were not going to be hurt at all. He didn't want them to know what was about to happen to him. He would leave the house and order the Manson family members to take their life. Rosemary would be carried to a bedroom while her husband would be stabbed. They would actually find that war was carved into his stomach. Her husband would lose his life. Rosemary would share the same fate. What was strange, nothing was carved into her. It was only her husband that had war carved into him. And what also was found at the crime scene, Helter Skelter was written in blood on the fridge. And after these two murders in a very short period of time, of course, you would think the city was in even more panic than they were before. At first, with these killings, for some reason, the police did not believe these murders were connected at all. They thought it was some sort of copycat killing in a way. That's what all the stuff written on the walls and stuff like that, which I don't know how you would think that's a copycat killing that quickly, but at the same time, maybe they were lying to the public. Just they didn't want anyone to think these murders were connected at the time, not to cause fear. But that's the theory I believe, that the police were just trying to keep this on the low for a second to figure out what is happening. But it would be months before they would even get a trace of what happened. A few months after these murders, the crimes would still be unsolved. The Manson family ranch would be raided, but they wouldn't be raided for the murders. They would be raided for things like robbery and finding stolen guns and cars, just a ton of stolen stuff. The Manson family members were locked up. That is including Manson himself and then Susan Atkins. Susan Atkins, which was actually, like I told you, the girl who claimed she took the life of Sharon Tate. Now, at this time, nobody knew this, but she would be basically told on herself and her cult, because she was in prison telling people, or jail, telling people, hey, me and my team, me and my group of people were part of those killings. We did that. We killed those people. Me and my friends killed those people. And of course, out of concern, I'm guessing one of her cellmates were like, okay, I'm gonna tell one of the cops because this is crazy if she's lying. And the Manson family members who were involved in the murders, they would go to court. And of course, not all the Manson family members were involved. There was still a lot of them out on the streets. Actually, here's a few photos of the Manson family members who were not charged with murder sitting outside the courtroom during his trial, being clearly disrespectful, flicking off the cameras. These trials, this is where some of the very creepy and disturbing footage came out. For example, the Manson family girls going to court and singing in the hallway while going to court.
She originally lied about Manson's role in the murders to protect him during their first trial.
Manson showing a smile while he's walking the court. Even this example when he would cut inside prison, he would cut an X into his forehead. Same day, the girls would copy him and cut an X to his forehead. This in 1972, California would they would take away the death penalty, so the members would get life. A lot of interviews came out, him talking about his kids and his home life, and how he started the Manson family cult, what was going on at the time, why he picked the people he did to die. It's really sad that a lot of the members, or even Charles Manson himself, they asked him, I seen a clip, they asked him about Sharon Tate and like, why would you take her life? And she was such a, you know what I'm saying, she was an upcoming actor, such a nice lady. And he basically brushes off, and he's just like, yeah, that's not the world I live in, or something like that. I believe he was trying to dig for attention. That's always seemed what he does. You see all these super crazy interviews of him just wiling out, just saying totally crazy stuff. Same with Susan Atkins. She's really been trying to, I know actually a lot of them, some of them have been released in 2025, which is very crazy. But I remember certain clips of Susan Atkins. She was trying to ask for forgiveness for what she's done to those families, which it's hard to forgive someone that legit killed or took the life of a pregnant woman. That is pretty terrible, and so many innocent people, and show no remorse and call for it. I want to say rest in peace to everyone we talked about in this video. Rest in peace to everyone in the Tate murders that lost their lives, all the innocent people that lost their lives. And if you guys want to hear another cult video, let me know in the comments what you guys want me to talk about next. I hope you guys found this video useful and educational, and I will see you guys in the next true crime video. And again, comment and like and subscribe for more true crime content. Have a good night, guys.